we only have one life, our life is short, and if we continue to do things that are stealing our joy, stealing our happiness, frustrating us, stressing us out, only you and I can make the changes. Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Diamond Life Mentor Podcast. It's been such a roller coaster ride leading up to the launch, to my 10-year business anniversary, all the preparation of putting the podcast together and really wanting to make a positive difference in your life with the content that I'm talking about. And as I got ready to record this episode, a lot of things were coming up for me. And the pressure of what am I going to talk about on this next episode, the feelings of, is it a good enough topic? Is it going to be something that you receive? All these thoughts were running through my mind. And the more that I was stuck in this place, the more I realized that this was actually going to be the perfect topic for this episode. Now, I have plenty of other things that I want to share with you in the next few episodes that are going to be released after this one. But for some reason, this felt like the most real, true topic that I could actually talk to you about, because I'm sure you're going to find some relatability to wherever you are in your life right now, with your goals that you have, with some of the big ideas and projects that you want to get started on, and the fear that creeps in, the doubt, the uncertainty, the overthinking, the analysis paralysis. And I just want to let you know that it happens to all of us. It happens to me as well. And you may be inspired by my particular position in life, my status, my income, my success. If you know me well, you know I've been at this for a while. And even though that's the case, these feelings of being a human being, they never really go away. And so with that being said, I'm so grateful and so honored that you're listening to my podcast, that you've subscribed, you've left incredible 5-star reviews. And if you haven't had a chance to yet, I would appreciate it if you took the time to really rate the show on the value that this is adding into your life. And you know, we launched the show just a little over a week ago at the time of this recording, and it's already ranked number 1 in Australia for education self-improvement, number 1 in Finland, number 4 in Canada. It got as high as number 19 in the US so far, and plenty of other countries. In Britain, it was number 8. And it's really humbling that a brand new project has gotten off to such an amazing start. So I just want to say thank you for listening. Thank you for all the posts on social media, tagging us, following our brand new account at the Diamond Life Mentor. And I'm already receiving such positive feedback and stories of how it's impacting your life, which is so cool. I've been able to interview my first mentor, Darren Jacqueline, and one of my biggest success stories inside of my organization with Clint X. Morgan on the last episode. And we broke down and talked about so many things that I feel are really relatable to the average person when you consider, what if I could live a life of freedom? What if I could build the diamond life for me and my family? And so we'll talk a little bit more about that on this episode today too. But I just wanted to come out here to connect, to be real with you. And one of the things that I was really inspired by when I was thinking about launching this podcast for the last number of years was I didn't want to feel like I was stuck in a box. I didn't want to feel like I had to talk about this or I couldn't talk about that, or I had to keep some kind of rhythm in the sense of like I must do, 50% guest interviews or 50% solo episodes. Any type of obligation feeling for me where I have to do something really takes the fun and joy out of it for me at this particular stage of my career. And so every time I feel like I'm stuck in a box, I'm going to just break through that by coming on here, pressing record, sharing my honest feelings around what's coming up for me and how I'm overcoming that. And then you can extract value from that, hopefully, and relate that back to your own journey, your own life, your own business, and go, man, I'm doing that as well. And if you break through it same way that I'm breaking through it, then I think that's going to be really, really beneficial. So one of the couple things that I wanted to bring up on today's episode was diving back into some of the stuff we touched on in the last episode that I shared, where I asked you to do some homework. And I wanted to always provide you with some form of practical tips that you could take and learn about yourself and get clarity about your life, get clarity about where you want to go, so that it doesn't feel like every single day you're confused, not sure where to start, wondering why you aren't where you are, etc. So the exercise and homework I provided for you at the end of episode 3 was to make a list of all the things that you want and all the things that you don't want in your life. And then from that place, we can start to look at, how do you eliminate the things you don't want? How do you make the necessary changes? And so I want you to get in touch, send me a DM on our Instagram account at the Diamond Life Mentor, and let me know how that exercise turned out for you. What did you discover? What did you learn? Did you have any big aha moments where you're like, wow, I didn't realize that it was really that simple when it came to categorizing what I like, what I love, and what I dislike or what I hate about my life, but I'm doing it anyways, day after day after day after day. And that is a form of insanity, right? We only have one life. Our life is short. And if we continue to do things that are stealing our joy, stealing our happiness, frustrating us, stressing us out, only you and I can make the changes, right? We have to look in the mirror and go, this isn't working for me anymore. And the part that makes this tricky is that sometimes when we solve a problem in our life, with our schedule, with our marriage or relationships, or with our children, those things are ever evolving. And I'm experiencing this in my own life, just like you are, where I have a toddler and my wife and I are always pivoting, always adjusting based on my daughter's needs, based on sort of the learning and development stage that she's in, her sleep cycle, her whatever it might be. And so we adjust when we do certain things that we need to do individually, as a couple, as a family. And sometimes right when you get a good rhythm, you're like, man, this is really working awesome. It stops working. And from that moment that it stops working to the moment that you finally get around to adjusting it, to changing it, to optimizing it, it could feel like a really frustrating time in general. And that frustration is where some people get stuck for months, for years, for decades, and sometimes forever. And so my exercise that I gave you is meant to help you establish what is the highest priority for you to change as quickly as possible right now, so you're not in that repetitive cycle. And the adjustment that you might make doesn't have to be permanent. It doesn't have to be something like that you'll never be able to adjust or change. It's just, what is the immediate solution right now in the short term? And that's so helpful. And so back to the podcast and my experience with launching the show. If you go back to the first few episodes on YouTube, for example, or even on our social media page at the Diamond Life Mentor account, you'll notice that the quality of the video, the audio, the look, the feel, it keeps changing, right? And it's changing because I'm constantly trying to improve my settings, my framing, my this, my that. And so it's frustrating on one hand because I look back on episodes I filmed like a month ago and I'm already mad at the quality, right? And that's not to be negative about it. It's not to put myself down. It's just this hunger and this desire to constantly get better and improve. And for example, if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll notice that the color of my skin, the color of the background, the color of the green is popping completely differently than some of the first podcast episodes. And I am a perfectionist so badly that I have to fight through that. I have to break through that, because on the other side of perfectionism is a fear of looking stupid. And so a lot of people that say I'm a perfectionist, that's really a mask or like a cover up for what they're really saying is, I don't want to look stupid. I don't want to start this business before I know that I could succeed, before I know that I could win, before I know that I can make money. But that's not how life works. That's not how anything works. That's not how business works. And it's definitely not how starting a new podcast works. What is more beautiful is owning your imperfections and owning that learning journey, that learning curve, and basically just rolling with it and being like, you know what? I'm inspired in this moment to create. And that is the most important thing that every single person listening to this right now has to realize about where you are today. What have you actually created? And I know it sounds like a crazy question, but most people haven't created much aside from what other people have sort of delegated to you. So what you're doing is you're fulfilling on someone else's creation. And what I mean by that is, if you work at a job, and there's nothing wrong with working at a job, but if you're an employee and you're working at a job, you are fulfilling on someone else's idea or someone else's creation, and you're helping them create that, which is actually really cool and not to be perceived as a bad thing. However, when you're looking at building your own life of freedom, creating your own diamond life, it will be connected in some way, shape, or form to your own creation. And with the power of the internet and social media and so on, we can all be creators in some way. We can create content, we could create a business, we could kind of take some ownership on a skill that we want to have. There's lots of ways of doing it. So ask yourself, what is the percentage of time that you allocate to creating versus consuming? Because a lot of us get sucked into the consumption, and then the consumption leads to the perfectionism, and then the perfectionism leads to us getting overwhelmed. And then once we're overwhelmed, we get stuck and we don't actually take any action. And then if we don't take action, then we stay frustrated about the way things are. So ultimately, the reason why I'm sharing this is because I was like, man, it was actually easier to create the first few episodes when there was an anticipation of launching, there was an excitement of launching, but there was also a lot of question marks around like, who's going to listen, what's going to be the feedback. But now that the feedback is coming out and the show is live, for some reason I got stuck in this place of like, what's going to be my next episode? And it's kind of weird. It's a weird way to look at things, but I think it's also quite normal. I think it's quite normal for all of us to have this excitement of starting something new. And a lot of people, that has to do with, like, for example, an online business. And there's a lot of excitement, right? You're daydreaming about the future and all the amazing things that could happen if you become successful, if you are able to quit your job, if you're able to travel with your family, whatever the goal is that you're really excited about. And so people get excited about that. But then once they get started, it's like the reality sets in. The holy shit, I actually have quite a bit of work that I got to do. I got a bunch of learning that I need to do. I got a whole bunch of planning and preparing that I have to do. And so kind of the reality sets in, and the dream for a lot of people gets shattered. But what I'm here to tell you is that it's one in the same. The dream comes with the package of working, preparing, planning, practicing, being real, owning it. And most people actually get inspired by someone's growth and their journey and their willingness to take imperfect action and keep showing up and keep showing up and keep showing up and being consistent than they actually do from someone who seems to have a perfect experience with something. Because sometimes people have a really hard time behind the scenes and they front or make it look like it's super easy. And that's exactly why I chose to talk about this on this episode, because I could have just hid from you guys, right? I could have just pretended that I had this amazing launch, ranked top, whatever, all over the world in these different categories, amazing 5-star reviews, tons of shares. There's so much positive stuff happening on the social media highlight reel that everybody usually focuses on, right? But behind the scenes, being a podcast host, putting yourself out there, sharing your feelings, sharing your doubts about stuff is important as well. And so I hope you appreciate that. I wanted to let you know that I'm a real person, in the sense that I'm a real human being, and it's not always smooth sailing. I've been feeling quite a bit of pressure, quite a bit of stress, quite a bit of overwhelm with different projects that I got going on, different businesses I got going on, some guilt as well, where I'm really focusing on this next phase of my career, my next phase of my brand. I want to make a bigger impact on the world. And it's also coming with this feeling of, man, should I be doing this? You know, this is taking away from time with my wife. This is taking away time from my daughter. Am I making a mistake? Shouldn't I already be good and set, and I could just kind of sail into the sunset with my family because I've accomplished the diamond life for myself? And so there's this very interesting balance inside of me where on one hand, it's the greatest idea to do this. And on the other hand, I'm like, am I making a mistake? Am I screwing up? Am I taking this too far? And so you're going to be experiencing this on some level yourself for the rest of your life. And if you aren't, you're probably bullshitting yourself, right? You're probably hiding from 50% of who you are, because all of us have that yin and yang. Everybody has that equal opposite of the good times get matched by the hard times. You know, the successes always get matched by the failures and shortcomings and attempts that we may have had in our lives to make forward progress. And that's a big distinction between those of us who ever create something that we're proud of in any category of our life, whether that's personal or our health and fitness or business or finances or whatever, accolades, achievements, doesn't matter. There are so many losses that only the closest people to you know about, or potentially just your journal or your camera roll, or maybe a podcast where you're able to open up and talk about different aspects of things. So wherever you are on your journey right now, as you're listening to my podcast, if you're just getting started in entrepreneurship and wanting to create freedom for yourself in one way or another, it might be an online business similar to what I do. It might also be something completely different, which is amazing also. Inevitably, you're going to be faced with these concerns of, can I do this? Am I able to do this? Is it worth it? Am I making a mistake? Doubting yourself, etc. But it's normal. And when you fight through that, and when you own it, and you're able to be vulnerable and authentic and true to yourself, and then express that in whichever way you are able to, it might not be a podcast, it might be something different. It gives you this because you feel real. And once you get back to the realness, then you overcome that hurdle in the first place. And so for those of you who are building something and you feel like you don't have results yet, you haven't made sales yet, you haven't partnered with other business people in your organization yet, you don't have any leadership yet, you feel like you're lacking all the things that make somebody actually want to do business with you or partner with you, focus on the things that you do have and be owning that aspect of it. For example, one of the things I teach in my mentorship for those people who are building an online business in the direct sales space, in the high-ticket affiliate marketing space, is that you're essentially offering people an opportunity to work online. And sometimes people get confused with, oh, I'm supposed to be their mentor. I'm supposed to be their coach. And I don't have results. So how can I portray myself as this person? And what I always say to them is there are many different ways of getting a return on your investment that are not financially connected. And when we look at our personal development as a human being, the person you once were, even just a week ago or a month ago or 6 months ago or 5 years ago, and the person you have become just by having the courage to pursue something that you desire, a dream that you have, wanting to live a different way. That courage in and of itself is something that you should own and celebrate and be acknowledged for and talk about, right? Because your transformation is already underway. And just because the transformation may not feel complete, i.e., making the money or quitting your job or hitting the big rank or whatever it might be, doesn't mean that you haven't grown. It doesn't mean that you haven't produced some kind of results that are maybe not financial, but in another category that people admire and look up to. And I always tell people that accountability is one of the most inspiring things that we can share because people need accountability. They need someone who has a vision, who has certainty and clarity on where they're going, even when they're still on the journey, just like myself. I'm maybe further along the journey than some of you who are listening, but I still have a long road ahead of me, right? I'm still young, relatively speaking, to where I can get to one day. So there's a lot of work ahead of me. There's a long road ahead of me to travel. And so along my journey still now, I'm talking about transformation. I'm talking about, hey, it wasn't that long ago where the idea of having my own show, my own podcast, seemed like this far-fetched, ridiculous dream. Like, sure you can. I mean, anybody can start a podcast, but I'm like, you're not going to have anybody who's going to care or will want to listen to it, or never mind it being a top-ranking show. That was literally just recently, and I've become the person who made that decision, committed to it, put in the work, and is now going through some of those initial challenges of feeling like a rookie, right? Because the reason why we stay comfortable in our careers, our relationships with our physique or health is because it's easy. It's what we know. But as soon as we want to make a change, as soon as we want to lose weight or gain muscle or start a business or move to another country or learn a new language, that initial period makes us feel stupid. It makes us feel like a rookie, and that feeling sucks, you know? And so we avoid it as much as possible. But if you understand that everybody, when they start something new, feels that way, and that uncomfortable feeling leads them to eventually figuring it out, getting better with practice, then you have this relatability with your audience where they're like, okay, this person's not trying to pretend that it was easy and they made no mistakes and they learned it on their first try and like they clicked the button and it worked and there wasn't like a lot of frustration and headaches, etc. And that's not the reality. So for those of you who are wanting to find a way to build your business without having financial results yet, talk about the transformation. Talk about who you are already becoming, how you have changed from the person you were not that long ago, how you see things differently than you used to, your perspective, your beliefs, your philosophies, how much more positive you are, how much more grateful you are, and that you're looking for other people who are ready to grow, ready to learn, to lock arms with you, and be in a community of other people who are like-minded, who are supportive, who see things similarly, have similar visions and goals as you, and invite them to come along. You don't have to pretend that you're someone that you're not, or that you have achieved results that you haven't yet. None of that is actually relevant, because you can leverage the financial success, the track record of success from your leaders who are actually there to support yourself and your new team members inside the community. It doesn't actually all fall on you. And that is why so many people are afraid to show up for themselves, because they're pitching something that they really have no business pitching, which is, I'm going to mentor you, I'm going to coach you, I'm going to show you how to be successful. But really, it's not you. It's the platform, it's the training, it's the community, it's your leaders above you who can support you, not actually you. And so by you framing it in this way, you feel like a fraud, you feel like an imposter, and that's going to show up in your content. It's going to make you lose your confidence. And so I wanted to really make sure that this is clear for everybody on this call and talk a little bit more about what Clint and I started to dive into as well, which was this whole idea of, if we know that having more freedom unlocks a whole new world in our lives of what's possible, then why don't more people pursue learning how to create that? And Clint's response was really beautiful and so on point, where he said that people just don't believe that it's possible for them. They think there's this criteria that they're not credible, or they don't come from a family where that's a thing, or they haven't gone to school or got a degree or a diploma or whatever. So they feel like it's outside of their own reach. But what I want to encourage you to start looking at and believing is that none of that is true. None of that is real. Because now that we have access to open knowledge and information, especially since the internet has really become something that is in all of our pockets on our smartphones and laptops, and we have access to Wi-Fi, the only limitations are the limitations that you willingly choose to put on yourself. And if you believe you're only worthy of whatever income you're currently making at your job or in your current business or whatever, then that is what you will create for yourself. But if you start to go, why can't I earn 10 times more than what I'm earning right now, right? Why can't I earn way more than right now? The answer is you can, but first you have to own it. Then you have to do some research and create yourself some curiosity in that direction. And everything will start to unlock for you, just like Clint said, where you become gullible and you go, okay, so I can go on YouTube or Google or start reading books on certain topics or investing in coaching and mentorship, which I believe is actually the fastest way to get what you want, because you're collapsing timeframes, right? Like for me, I spent over $500,000 in coaches and mentors and events and masterminds, getting access to people who had the results that I wanted. And this is so important. So when you go to a big event, hypothetically speaking, right? There's like events like Tony Robbins, there's like 10,000 people in the audience. There's other industry specific events, marketing, sales, training, different things like that. Some of them are really big where they're meant to have a ton of people show up, right? And they're in like stadiums or convention centers. But usually, even those events, they have tiered tickets, and they have general admission, like VIP admission, some other gold package, diamond package, elite package. There's all these packages. And some of the higher up ones could be like $5,000, $10,000, $25,000 to be in attendance. And the average person looks at that and thinks it's insane to spend $25,000 to be in one part of the room sitting with certain people versus the general admission, which might be $500, but it's the same speakers talking about the same information, drastically different price point. So the average person would think it's insane to spend the $25,000 and they can't afford it, for example, than it is to sit in the $500. So there's two ways to approach this. If you have no business spending $25,000 on a ticket because that's like, 30% of your annual income or something like that, then what I used to do back in the beginning of my journey is I'd pay the $500 just getting in the room, okay? So I was not in the VIP section, I wasn't in the diamond section, but I didn't care. What I did was I just got myself surrounded by those people, and then I tried to find sneaky ways to invite myself into like the dinner parties or the after parties or the little side conversations or whatever. And most people have the name tag on that actually shows they're a diamond level or premier, elite or whatever. And I'd start networking and meeting these people and asking them questions around what do they do for work, what is their business, and so on. And I would extract so much valuable information just by being in their presence that it allowed me to unlock something inside myself to take me to the next level. And so the next time I went to an event, I upped my investment into the next tier ticket, and I worked my way all the way up to the 5,000, 10,000 plus admission because of the people I got to meet. And so what higher level people will think about is levels of access. When you get a higher level of access to somebody who has amazing results in whatever it is they do, they're going to teach you the real stuff, not the theory, not the fluff, not the stuff that may work or may not work, but you're getting access directly to ask a question from the person who's done it, which is why inside my mentorship program, the reason why it costs what it costs, which is way underpriced and it's super affordable, is because you get access to asking me directly questions about where you are, what you're stuck on, and so on. So when you're just getting going, to avoid learning and getting access to people is doing yourself such a negative disservice, because the only way that we grow, okay, this is so important, okay, I want you to write this down, I want you to remember this. The only way that we grow and change is with the new knowledge and information that we get, that we receive. So if you're not reading books, if you're not listening to podcasts or audios, which is obviously not you because you're listening to this podcast right now, and if you're not meeting new people at events, putting yourself in rooms, paying for access, then you are going to continue to think and see the world through the exact same lens that you've always seen it, which means all you're doing is growing older and not getting any smarter, not getting any wiser, and not growing your skill set and your awareness to what can take you to the next level in whatever category you are motivated to grow in at this particular time. And for me, the Diamond Life has been created by this quest, by this search. What are the clues? You know, there's a famous saying, success leaves clues. I'm like, okay, well, first of all, I got to find, where does success hang out? Where do successful people hang out? There's lots of places, but when there's like a big event, it's almost like this big light that's flashing, like all successful people in this room. And it costs money to get in this room. And then the average person's like, I'm just going to watch Netflix and chill. And it's like they're not even aware that all the successful people in like one city are all coming together under one roof. And it's probably a pretty good place for you to go and attend, just to have that proximity, because it's going to rub off on you, you know? And so that's what I did. And the more that I learned, I unlocked these things inside of myself that were always there. And that's what is so interesting about mentors and coaches and books, is that it's not necessarily that you're learning something new. It's that you're unlocking that part of yourself and you're like, there it is. This has been here all along, but you needed someone to help you unlock it. And that's why in this podcast, we talk about the master keys to freedom, because the information I'm sharing with you should be a key to unlock things within yourself as well. So when you hear me say something, you're like, that makes perfect sense. I feel like I already knew that, but maybe I wasn't taking action on it. Maybe I wasn't taking the next step on it, etc., etc. And so first step is to believe that yes, you can too. And I know many of you believe that already, but some of you think you believe it, and you don't really believe it because your actions aren't demonstrating that you actually believe it. So first you have to believe you can, which I'm telling you, you can. Then you have to go on this quest to be curious. Where can I learn what I need to learn to change my life, to level up my life? Then after that, you need to put yourself in rooms and pay your money to gain access to where these people hang out. And I teach this in my mentorship specifically, where you're paying to play. So let's say, for example, there's a coach, a mentor, someone that you look up to, but they don't know that you exist. They don't know your name. They've never spoken to you. They never talked to you on the phone. You've never seen them in person even, perhaps. And they have an opportunity to work with them for $5,000, $10,000. Well, you have to pay to play. And what happens is you pay the money, and because it's a business transaction initially, that particular person you look up to is like, hey, you exist instantly. It's like now they know that you exist, which seems kind of crazy to some people. They're like, so what's your point, Balazs? Well, now you're in this person's reality because you paid for access. But from that moment forward, they get to start to know you, right? Know what you're about, your backstory. They can go back and forth. You can share questions, and you're building a relationship, even though it started off as a financial transaction in some cases at first. And what you'll notice is that if you get along and you have a lot of things in common, you're going to build a relationship. You're going to build a friendship with that person. And as time goes on, that initial transaction of $5,000 or whatever it was becomes irrelevant in the long term. Not only will you gain an ROI from the things that you learn from this coach, from this mentor, but you're also very likely to gain a friend. And from a friend, you're going to gain an alliance. And once you have an alliance, you're essentially having each other's backs in anything that you do. Whether you start a podcast, you give each other a shout out, you support each other, you cheer each other on. There's all these things that are intrinsic value after the fact. But what most people don't realize is that if you see someone who's got this amazing network, their friends are high profile entrepreneurs or influencers or whatever category you want to look at, how did they meet each other initially? Well, a large percentage of those relationships started off by paying money to gain access to a mastermind, a program, a coaching, something. And from there, they got access, built a relationship, and started going. And then after a while, friends introduced each other to friends, introduced each other to friends, and your network actually grew into a new, higher level than where you started off, because you unlock a new level of what's possible for yourself as you enter new circles. And the average person just stays stuck in the circle or the cards that they were dealt. So you had whatever friends in high school, not saying they're bad people, they're amazing, it's all good, and you just keep hanging out with those people the rest of your life. Or you go get a job somewhere and you get some coworkers, you make some friends with those coworkers, and those are the people that you hang out with. But how many of you listening right now intentionally go, look, I want to be a part of that circle over there. I don't know anybody in that circle. I need to level up my game. I need to become someone of value where I would fit in that group. I could provide something to that group. I could also learn something from that group, so it ends up being a win-win. And you enter this new circle of status, this new circle of success, this new circle of whatever it is, and that becomes your new normal. And from there, you can level up again, level up again. So ultimately, the reason why I'm sharing this with you is because some of you will be listening to this podcast, loving the content, loving the information, and for some reason, there's still this level of separation of good for those people, good for Balazs, good for his guests, good for Clint, good for whoever. But deep down, you're like, I don't think it's for me. I don't think I can do this. Or I'm happy with my life. You know, what I have is enough. And you've settled and you aren't striving for more. You're not striving for growth. You're not thinking there's another happier place or more successful place than where you are currently. And my question to you is, what if there is? And what if it's actually closer than you think? And all you have to do is reconsider how you're living, how you're thinking, how you're showing up, some of your priorities. And once you believe you're worthy, everything starts to unlock for you, because when you see opportunities, you're not coming at it with this, oh, that's expensive, and who would ever pay money to go to that event for $1,000 or $2,000 or $5,000? Instead, you're going to look at that same opportunity and go, it's only $1,000 to get myself in a room with all these people that I want to network with and associate with and become friends with. That's it. It's only $1,000. You're going to see it completely differently, because the difference is that you now feel worthy to be in that room with those people, whereas before you were actually bitter and jealous and envious and negative and talking shit about the people in that room. And that's what made you feel more secure in yourself. But as soon as the worthiness changes, you go, wait a second, I should be in that room, and it's only $1,000. And so this is exactly what I had to do, because when I first got started, as I already shared some of my story with you, the worthiness was a really, really big missing piece for me. And I always thought to myself, who do I think I am wanting to be like those people, or wanting to have a lifestyle like those people? Who do I think I am? And once I started to shift that, and I'm like, why couldn't I? Of course I can. Everybody can. Everybody who believes they can, they can. If you believe you can, you're right. If you believe you can't, you're right. And so I encourage you at the end of this episode to think about that, to think about a few different things. How can you own your journey where you are right now? Focus on the transformation that you've already experienced. Don't get caught up in the results you haven't created or the money that you haven't made. Own your results. Talk about your transformation. And if you're in a business where building an organization or a team is important, then invite people in from an accountability standpoint and lock arms and do it together and become a better version of yourself together and leverage everything else that's in place, so you're not getting trapped in fronting or pretending to be someone that you aren't yet, specifically to do with the results. That's the first thing. The second thing is just be vulnerable. Own it. It's all about growth. It's all about taking imperfect action. And I share that with you at the beginning of this episode is, here I am, brand new podcast, lots of learning experiences, constantly improving, constantly getting better. And as you continue to listen to these episodes, you're going to see constant and never-ending improvement. And then finally, what I shifted into towards the end of this episode is a feeling of worthiness, and where can you go to unlock this next level of who you are. And it literally comes from information and access to people. And so you can do that through what you're learning, what you're watching, what you're reading, events, mastermind coaches. But remember that the higher the ticket cost or price of admission, the more access you're going to receive for that amount of money. And the more access you receive, the more time frame you collapse. And so if you don't want to be dinking around for the next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, trying to figure it out all on your own, and you want to kind of get there, accelerate your results, get there as quickly as possible, then start thinking, how can I get access to the people who have the knowledge, experience, and results that I want to create in my life, so they can give me the real stuff as quickly as possible. I can implement it, I can take action on it, and collapse timeframes and get there much quicker than the person who's teaching me. And that simple concept that to some people, most people, is completely foreign, has gotten me to where I am today. And when I share that I've spent over $500,000 to unlocking access to knowledge and experience and wisdom to get me the life that I have now, the average person thinks I'm absolutely freaking crazy, but they also don't have the life that I have. And so that is one diamond nugget for all of you to finish off this episode. And I can't wait to dive into some of the other content now that I got this one off my chest. But once again, I just want to say thank you so much for the support, for the love, for hearing me out, for letting me be real with you, and letting you know that, you know what, as much as things are amazing, there is a lot of challenges and obstacles internally behind the scenes that all of us have to overcome, because we're all human beings. And so if you're having a hard time right now with anything in your life, if you're being hard on yourself, you're disappointed that you're not in a certain place or you haven't achieved a certain goal, I just want to let you know that that's okay. And you're perfectly on track where you should be. Keep going, be positive, break through by just owning it like I did on this episode, and everything will click, fall into place. It'll become easier and easier the more you practice, the more you do it. And people will respect you for showing both sides of the journey, not just the wins, not just the highlights, but the struggles, the challenges, the adversities, and the moments where you feel maybe a little bit of imposter syndrome, or maybe you feel like you're not qualified compared to other people. Like, why should someone listen to you versus someone over here? Whatever the reason may be, I want you to know you are good enough. You are worthy. You can do it. Just believe that you can. Take the next step and just watch this beautiful journey unfold for yourself. So thanks again for the support. Please follow our brand new Instagram account if you haven't already, at The Diamond Life Mentor. Leave us a review on Spotify, on Apple. Be honest with us. Hopefully it's 5 stars, but whatever is true for you is amazing. Share this podcast with your friends. The more people that we can have listening to the show, the better the show becomes, the better the guests become, and we're in this together. So much love to you. Have an amazing day, and I'll see you again on the next episode. Take care.